reboot week of my figure drawing class. Today we'll be doing some continuity from what we did Wednesday, and I better actually show you a little bit of what we did Wednesday. Let's see here. Leave it with this. There we go. So this is what we did Wednesday, which is we did a lot of like really pushed gesture drawing from the mindset of an animator. Let's see here. Find some good examples in here. So the format of this class that's going to go, we're going to start with some warm-ups. We'll really try to like loosen up and stuff. I'll give you some general guidelines on screen of what we're going to be doing, and then I'll do a demo for showing you a technique that we're going to be using for the rest of the evening. And then we'll be doing it, and I will be taking people's drawings when you post to the Discord chat and pulling them into my drawing app and then doing draw-overs on them. Like, there's a few examples of when I did that. Like, here's one I did last Wednesday, showing how to like simplify the gesture on that. And there's another page in here somewhere. But the kind of stuff you're seeing on screen right now is a little bit what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to be doing a lot of this sort of stuff, but we're also going to be trying to get some more kind of solid shapes in there. Like here's an example of a draw over I did. We're showing how to push the gesture and find the energy in a pose to really push and emphasize it. So what's going to be going tonight is one part art workout, one part class. I will be doing demos, and I will be doing critique draw-overs of people's work. So as you're doing the time poses tonight, during the 5-minute breaks between the 25-minute sessions of time poses, just post them in the Discord chat, and I'll be able to get to them and bring them into the drawing app to give draw-over critique. Anyway, yeah, that's the stuff I did Wednesday. And this is the stuff we're going to do tonight. What I've done so far today is kind of warming up in the approach I'm going to be taking tonight. A lot of these are invented figures right here. So like there's like weird kind of proportional things going on with them and so on, because I was kind of really warming up and trying to get like the loose energy of like these kind of pushed gestural shapes of like my puppet that I would use for animating basically. So we're going to be playing with basically that kind of stuff tonight. Like this kind of stuff right here that I'm doing is what we're going to be doing tonight. But also we're going to be trying to look for more kind of pliable shapes and opportunities to put in little bits of shape construction here and there and integrate it with the gesture. But it's going to be very high energy. We're going to get, you should be working up a sweat when you're doing this evening. Make sure you have a good range of motion with your arm. And you know what? These were my warm-ups today, so I'm going to actually just start a new drawing app here. I might have to finagle with a few things, but let's see if I can get this working. New window. Here. Let's see if that works right. That works right. Okay. Alright, save this. Okay, figure. Alright. So we're ready to go. I'm going to start the clock right now. Okay, Google, set timer for 25 minutes.
25 minutes, and that's starting now.
Alright, so we'll start with this pose. This is a pretty good pose. I'm just going to put on some royalty-free jams, and then we'll get going. All right. So for those of you who have shown up this evening, thank you for showing up. My classes have been a little inconsistent lately because I've been kind of juggling several things, but I think I found a good rhythm for what I want to do in my classes now. Oh, by the way, these are 3-minute poses. So what I'm going to be kind of looking for is I'm going to be looking for rhythms in the pose to kind of play off of. And I'm going to be trying not to concern myself with detail. I'm using a big, thick line, almost like kind of a brush pen, because I don't want to get caught up in detail. I want, like, the gesture. Yes, you draw. Yes, you draw. What Whoopsie is asking there. Yes, you're supposed to draw along this session. Whatever drawing materials you have handy, just make sure you're sitting in a way where you can use your full range of your arm to draw, whether it be the itty-bitty drawing tablet or whatever. You need to be drawing from your shoulder in order to get the good workout the good art dexterity workout that you need to get out of this. And you need to do that so you don't hurt yourself when you're doing this, and also so you build the right kind of dexterity. And that music seems a little loud. So I've self-deafened myself in the classroom right now, but a little bit later I'm going to undeafen myself so that people who are in the classroom will be able to talk on the stream. At least for the warm-ups I'm going to keep it silent, but like maybe during the break I'll undeafen. And then people can ask questions or whatever. Right now I'm just kind of trying to set the tone of the class. I think 3 minutes is a little bit too much for the starting poses, so I'm going to change that maybe to... Let's just go for it. Let's just do ones. Let's do really quick poses. You don't have any time to really be fancy or detailed with these. You have to go for like the biggest, broadest statement with these poses when they are 1 minute long. You don't have any time to be fancy with your drawing. You have to get the meaning of the pose in, or whatever little vignette you're trying to study. So there's two approaches you can use for this. You can use a thin pen, or like a pen with no thick to thin at all. Or you can use a really thick pen that does have thick to thin, but gives you big, big lines, even when you are pressing very lightly. I'm using almost kind of like a brush pen or a grease pencil right here, like an animator grease pencil. Like it's really like smeary and gesturally and stuff. You kind of sculpt with it a little bit. Because what I'm going for here is to try to get a feeling out of the pose. I'm not trying to slow down at this stage anyway. But as I get more warmed up, I will start slowing down and making smarter decisions and stuff. Felt like that head should be just a little bit. So keep it really simple. You only have a minute to do these, so you just want to get maybe like the line of action and a little bit of the gesture of the pose. You don't have time to get fancy. Just trying to get like your initial read of the drawing in, or the pose in. big. Let's shrink some of these. Oops. Alright, so I'm going to try to strategize about how I would handle this. Maybe like a circle and sort of a moon shape for the head. I'd use kind of a square shape for the body a little bit. Just got those bulky hoodie sort of thing going on there. Shrink that a bit actually. But I'm not going for the simplest statement. I'm getting caught up in detail, and I don't have time for that. So I'm just going to do this and this in the time that I had left. There's not time in a minute to get super fancy with the drawing. That's the point. I'm just trying to get the gesture, the line of action, the overall kind of feel of the pose. And we're trying to get warmed up here too. Part of the purpose of warm-ups is to get kind of like the stuff out of your system that might be holding you back this evening. Like, you have a lot of nervous energy. It's okay to get that out of your system during warm-ups. Just go crazy scribbling. Get your blood pumping and stuff, and then when you're feeling it, you can start slowing down and paying more attention. Like, I don't have a lot of time to do very much with this pose. So what I'm going to take away from it is a little bit of analysis of the relation of the shoulders to the hips. When you don't have much time, strategize what you're going to get out of the pose, because the goal is not to make a pretty drawing. The goal is to use these as kind of a springboard to understand what you're looking at better, bit by bit. So in this case, I can start right here, get that nice curve to the back, bowing in sort of with the gravity on it, come back to the hips, shrink that a bit so I have more room to work with. She's supported on her foot there. She is moving forward on those roller skates. Very slightly balancing herself. Her forearm is like pretty close to her body back there. This arm is pretty slack. She's pretty solidly planted on that roller skate that she's traveling forward on. And she's got that hip tilt that's going backwards in 3D space back there, back to that other leg. Let's see, I'm going to do the one on the left. So get a nice curve to the body. Get like a little tilt for the shoulders, tilt for the pelvis, and then simple sweep gesture for the arm. Maybe like another gesture for the leg there, and back leg, why not? And then I got this arm here going up to the head, which I'm going to handle with just a quick do over like that. There we go. Just a simple gesture version of the pose. This guy's a little tricky. He's kind of standing straight on. There's not a lot of gesture in here. Well, not a lot of like counter-posy action that's obvious to really like hook into. So you kind of have to make something up a little bit, or hook into what little is there. In this case, I'm kind of hooking into the legs a little bit. I'm kind of drawing these. I'm approaching these drawings kind of how I would approach like my animation thumbnails if I'm like analyzing live action when I'm doing these. The goal is not for me to make pretty drawings with these. The goal is to understand the action a little better. So of these poses, I'm going to actually pick the kid that's leaning through the bars right there, because I think that one's an interesting pose to do within a minute. So we got this very simple shape right here for his body. We'll put the hole under here. If we were doing like 10-second poses or something, 15-second poses, I would be done. I'm just going to add this in. That'll tilt to the head. So I think it's time for me to make a new page. All right. So start with this head tilt here. Let's do that. Then I'm using like kind of a Glenn Vilppu approach right now to kind of rough in the basic gesture of what's happening here. Can even push that head a little more. Shrink that down. So I've drawn this guy before, but not in 1 minute, so Again, I don't have much time to draw this, so I'm just going to try to handle this in simple shapes. Simple lines. So let's try this one as simple as I possibly can do it, but make smarter decisions here. There we go. Whoop. Skip this one. I don't really think I can get much out of that one. Yeah, that's a nice one. So again, keep it simple. Look like a C curve, S curve, down right there. This is all about simplifying what the pose is doing into a way that kind of makes abstract visual sense. Thinking about things in the simplest possible visual terms. Like on here, what can I hook into? Well, I can hook into that straight arm on the left here. And that gives me more visual permission to really simplify the, whoops. Tilt of the hips. In this case, I found like kind of a flowing line of action through the pose. Then just go back through and I add the tilt to the shoulders, tilt to the hips. Then I add that sweeping line for the arm, that sweeping line for the arm. So we're going to do definitely more of these like kind of simple cuneiform sort of approaches that I'm taking, but I'm going to be building on them with some of the massy shapes I was showing off earlier. It's just that in these 1 minute poses, for me, I find it's most helpful to do this. At least for me right now. Because I'm making more like clear-headed observations this way about what the pose is actually doing and not getting caught up in scribbly details. Like the scribbly details can come when I'm working on longer poses, and then I can also make smarter moves with those scribbly details from after doing this. It's going to be kind of a gear change to go from this to like drawings where you don't have to be precious with your line though. But again, these are just warm-ups. And this is just one strategy for doing warm-ups, like, or 1 minute poses, rather. So I can already see myself getting a little stiff, so one of the things I'm going to be doing after we get done here with this sesh, I mean these are kind of flowing and stuff, but I feel like I could be bolder. I think I could go back into that. One of the things I'm going to be doing after during the next demo and stuff is I'm going to be showing off the more kind of energetic, wild, forceful drawing I was talking about. Maybe I can do a quickie of that in a minute on this pose, just for fun. Just kind of loosen up a bit after doing those slower, more methodical cuneiform poses. Just keep my hand light for now. Time. Okay, Google, stop. Okay, Google, set timer 5 minutes.
Done. 5 minutes added to your 25-minute timer.
Alrighty, so I'll pause it here. So some of the building blocks of what we're going to be using tonight, which I'll go over during the break, is this. These kind of like cascading, interlocking shapes. Another of the building blocks we're going to be using is straights. Straight lines, C-curved lines, and S-curved lines. Or here. C-curve, S-curve, straight. Also known as CSI if you've seen Proco. And one of the things we're going to be making use of is straights against curves, whether they be S curves or whatever. But like an example of that would be like so curve, straight. Can you do stuff like this, like I've shown this off before. So I actually may be doing some draw over of photographs because I feel like my engagement with what I'm drawing is a little bit disconnected right now, and a good way to get back into that would be to do some photo draw overs. And so I'm gonna suggest people for this next session screenshot some of the poses to bring into your drawing app, and then extracurricular of what the pose is being timed at. Do a draw over before moving on to the next pose. So I'll be doing that after the break. I'm curious, like I want to take a look and see what people have been posted for, what people have done for warm-ups so far. Maybe I can do a quickie demo and demonstrate some of the stuff I'm talking about, doing a draw over of someone's work after the 5-minute break. That would also help me warm up too. Let's see, Raboots has already posted some stuff. Yeah, there's some stuff Raboots has done that I can probably do drawovers of to show how to push them or how to handle things a little better. Oh, that's weird. Why did the chat box reset? Oh yeah, it's because I switched to a different thing. That's why. Boost that in size a bit. Let's see, do I have a water bottle here? Yes, I do. Pretty. Where do we post our warm-ups? In the Discord classroom chat. If you want me to do a drawing critique draw over during this session, you post them in the Discord classroom chat. Okay, Google, stop. Alright, so I'm going to grab some people's work from chat. Val's got some really nice stuff. Bring this in. Val's actually doing a pretty good job, I would say. But again, we're warming up, so maybe I can play off what you're doing a bit. I'm warming up too, mind you. So maybe I can play off of what you're doing a little bit, and also maybe bring one of the photographs from my figure drawing thing into this. Let me see if I can find a suitable photo that would be good to bring into this to demonstrate. Yeah, here we go. This one will do. Alright, so we're going to be doing a bunch of these, so get a bunch of photos ready. You can use the photos that are going to be on screen. I'm going to just set the gesture drawing app to go for about like 3 minutes here. So there should be plenty of photos on here for you to screenshot and pull for reference. But I actually really like that one. So I'm going to maybe pull that one in if I can get it later. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a drawing demo. Okay, Google, set timer for 25 minutes. Okay, Google, set timer for 20 minutes.
20 minutes, and that's starting now.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a red line draw over this. Show some possibilities of how to push things. So the good news is that I remember these poses because we just did them. So let's take a look at this dude, for example. So I remember from the original pose, it was really energetic. Like, there's a tremendous amount of energy in this pose. So there's a lot more you could have done to push it. And you can keep in mind stuff about how like the arm is kind of hooking over the body right here. So the fun part of like going from doing the time poses to doing a demo like this where I have all the time in the world and I can draw over existing work and stuff means that you can bring more of your brain power into it. So it's tougher to do stuff in those kind of timed pose sessions where you'll have like so much time to act. But when you have time to really slow down and think or like analyze things and stuff and you don't have the pressure of the clock ticking down on you, you can apply a little bit more of the stuff that you've been hit with at rapid fire pace in the longer pose sessions. And that's the goal of doing these time sessions. Like, you're not necessarily going to get the world's best drawings out of doing time pose sessions, unless it's like a full 30-minute drawing with breaks or something like that, where you really do have time to slow down and think and stuff. So if I recall from the pose, like, you could push this even more. Like, this guy was like really, really very dynamic. There was this kind of a lurch to his overall sweep of his body right here. It was like kind of, it looked like his whole body was kind of lurching with energy up right here. It looks like to me like he started maybe like with his foot right here. He maybe anticipated this kind of like, now this is where my animator brain is kicking in right now. I can almost kind of like see him doing this. Although he probably didn't do that. What he probably did was he probably did do an anticipation, but not as extreme as what I'm doing, with like something like this, before lifting his knee off the ground. But let's see. So he's got this leg forward, and then his back knee back there. I'm just really like pushing this, of course. I'm just making contrast between the poses and inventing something here. So if I were going to animate this, the arc would be something like the arc of his hips would be something like this. Going up like that. In fact, I probably could animate this. And maybe I should. Maybe I should save some. Maybe I should save thumbnails like this for like a animation demo in the future. But for taking it further, thinking like an animator, we're gonna use green line here. That won't work yet. So this guy's leading with his hips and his knees, so I'm gonna kind of think about this intuitively a little bit. He's still leaning forward, so body would maybe go like this. No. Just delete that and try again. Let the hips drive the action. Need something more like But this is the kind of thought process you'd go through when you're kind of trying to figure out your breakdowns between your two key poses and stuff. Like I'd play with this further and I'd like see how it looks. I'd go shift back and forth between them and stuff. Get rid of poses that aren't working and so on. I go through a trial and error process to kind of feel out something like that. Anyway, I'll reduce opacity on those so they don't cause too much visual confusion. Let's raise on these. And let's see. Put these in a folder of their own. So I'm going to keep doing the demos and I'll do a draw over on this one, but you can draw on screen or you can watch what I'm doing. So we got that guy. So this lady right here, she was a very curvy lady, so you could maybe make the head smaller. I think she had a tilt to her head. You can probably push the tilt more too. She definitely had like a tilt to her shoulders, counterposed by her curvy hips. So there was this really nice like feminine curve to her posture. You can kind of use these big masses right here to sort of work out her torso. So this, she's got one side of her that's compressed in her torso and one side of her that's stretching out. And she has kind of these sweeping but relaxed arm poses there. So I'm just kind of using a little lyrical little wire line here to kind of get the feet in, the general feeling of the legs and the feet in there. Trying to keep in mind like how she's kind of supporting herself, sense of weight that's on the body, on the legs a little bit. So this last one right here, there's more that can definitely be done with this. Let's start with the torso. Right here. And you get this leg, looks like it's acting as the support leg for the body here. So you notice this is a little curved, but it's still straight. It still kind of counts as a straight right there. And then this is like kind of S curve right here where I'm compressing it a bit because of the torso sort of sweeping and bending up over there. And then pushing the pose maybe beyond what the photo had originally. So I'm trying to find my own sort of energized version of the pose here. Keep in mind the tilt of the hips. So we got this up here, and then these hips are kind of doing this, counterposing them. but they're turning in 3D space. I'm sort of inventing the. I'm pretty sure this pose was like a vignette that didn't include the feet, so I'm just kind of inventing about where I think the feet would be planted, kind of. Now that I'm feeling more confident with that, I'm going to go back to this one a bit, maybe emphasize a few things here. Sweet little legs. But you get like these energetic poses, and this is like this is what you would like then lower opacity on. Oh, here, hang on 1 second. This kind of stuff is like what you would do for your initial kind of scribbly exploration, pushing the pose. You need like lower opacity on them if you're doing like a real drawing. Take like another color or something. Let's take like blue, for example. You go back in, kind of work some shapes into it. Maybe keep following the gesture a bit, but work out some shapes for it. At this phase, I mean, like you're not still like really tying things down. You're just kind of playing still with the gesture. So like stuff doesn't have to be accurate. You're kind of throwing down shapes that sort of work, and you can dial them in more as you go. So I'm kind of like using some pliable placeholder shapes, like for the gesture of the hand. I do have like in the back of my head like stuff like how hips work, like oh, this gesture drawing doesn't have the information of the hips recorded quite as much. So I address that a little bit, for example. I can put little light touches of like what direction things are facing and stuff a little bit here and there. And then in other passes I can do stuff like addressing the proportions and so on. Like this arm right here is looking a little long. It looks cool, but it looks, I mean, big sweepy lines and stuff. It's just incorrect. It's okay if it's incorrect, if it doesn't detract from the drawing. There's a difference between making design decisions and being sloppy, though. And we don't want to be sloppy. We don't want to be sloppy, but it's inevitable that you will kind of be as you're trying to work through these things. So you're not going to get perfect drawings right out of the gate, usually. There's usually going to be a lot of built-in flaws to them. And that's okay. You're not a perfectionist. You're hammering and chiseling away, trying to get the feeling of the drawing and then construct with it a little bit. So this is like our first pass of like our mannequin for this pose. I go back in and then like would address like proportional issues and things like that if I was going to develop this into an actual character drawing or something. But as you can see, it like has a pretty kind of like fun feel to it. I mean, there's bits and pieces in here that are like part of my personal shortcomings. Like there's issues with like the shoulders and stuff that don't feel right to me, that are going to be addressed as I get more experience studying a lot of that stuff. Like there's little kind of things that are particular to me, that are shortcomings to me, that I notice in this that I want to address in the future. But I mean, I'm feeling this pose, like this is something I can work with and work up if I was going to turn this into a real drawing. So let's do a draw over on this. This one will be really fun because I really like this pose. There's a lot to do here. There's a lot of stuff you can play with in the design, like the the hair shape can be part of the energy of the pose, for example. I'm going to use that as a basis to kind of think about her head, the energy from the pose coming from like a swirl from her head shape. A little kind of spiral coming out from the center, somewhere where her nose would be. Let's maybe play with that some more, actually. It's energy all throughout the body. So we're looking for energy here. Like there's other kinds of, I mean, we can pull some construction shapes out of this too, but I'm looking for energy right now because I want to kind of play with exaggerating this pose and play with what brings a pose like this to life, even if it's drawn inaccurately, anatomically or whatever. So I'm playing with and riffing off the energy. Trying to strategize about how I might change the pose to exaggerate this, or how I might think of it in terms of animation if I was going to have this pose go into another pose or something, or if they had poses that preceded it. So notice I'm like thinking of things in terms of like lines that are kind of going in similar flowy directions and stuff, like over the form here, for example. Kind of reinforcing other things that are happening. And you get this stuff by playing with it. Like I'm moving my hand, and if you look at my cursor, I'm moving my hand in a very circular motion because that's helping me flow with the force of the drawing. A version of this is the lemon slices that Ethan talks about. I'm loud and brash with my drawing, so I can't be as subtle with that sort of technique as like someone like Ethan would be, at least not in my current stage. So I tend to like be brash and broad with how I use these kind of like set rules of how I move my hand and arm to define stuff in the drawing. So got this. Let's lower opacity on it just a little. And I'll take another color. So I want to understand more about this pose. This already reads really fun to me. Like this feels fun. Like if I were to like simplify the line work on that, or like on line work on something like this, it would be a pretty fun like graphical pose that I could turn into a design. So let's maybe experiment a little bit with that. What can I do with this to make this into, and so tie this down a little bit further and make this into an interesting design. And maybe push it just a little bit. So I kind of feel like I want to go that route right now, instead of just like going overly broad. But there will be time to do overly broad stuff later too. I'm interested in seeing how I can play off how the pose actually works a little more than pushing it. I'm looking for opportunities to push it too. Look at this. Curve, straight, right there. See that? You gotta have to try to train your brain from doing this stuff to see those opportunities to use those simplification techniques of like straights against curves stuff. That's a straight, that's a curve right there. That's a straight, that's a curve. That's a straight, that's a curve. Also, I forgot to turn on the microphone during that last break, but I'll try to remember to this next one so we can have a little chit chat before I get back to doing more class stuff. So I don't know how open I want the mic to be this entire session, but I do like to chat with people in the Discord while doing these. It's always quite fun, and it helps me kind of play off whatever they're up to. Or whatever, or help answer any questions they have, so I can spark on some kind of an inspirational thing. Alright, so speak of the devil. Okay, Google, set timer for 5 minutes.
Done. 5 minutes added to your timer.
So I will undeafen myself, and now people will be able to. I will be able to hear people on stream. Actually, I was self-deafened. Okay, so the classroom is open to voice right now. So if you have anything to say in voice, feel free to speak up or ask a question or whatever.
How do you eyeball proportions correctly if you're trying to use line of action?
It's tricky. I'm still struggling. I'm still struggling with it. But
yeah,
I mean,
if you look at anything that I did, it's just like I can't seem to quite. I'll put down line of action, but I can't quite seem to put the chest and the waist in between that.
Well, one thing to do if you are struggling with proportion, like one thing you can do is you can use like the head as your unit of measurement. Like once you, that's why for a lot of figure drawing, like the first thing you want to establish is the head a lot of times. Because then you can use your head as like, okay, that head, I can like use my thumb and forefinger or something like this to kind of say like, oh, this pose is that many heads tall. Her arm to bicep is about this far along. Her forearm to her bicep to her wrist is pretty close to how long her head is. Her calf is about 2 heads. Her calf and her leg are about like 2 heads long, for example. You just kind of use like a unit. You can decide on like some kind of a unit of measurement, and then you can kind of relate things to it. The other thing is that for short poses, proportion is inherently going to be off because you don't have enough time to really kind of dial in the accuracy of the proportion. So you maybe want to get something in the ballpark, but it's okay if you mess up the proportion in a shorter pose.
I just posted an example in the chat just to show like where my brain's trying to thought process the line of action. It's
Yeah.
not quite getting there.
I'll scoot this over here. The value of doing these drawovers is it kind of helps you touch base a little bit with what it is you're drawing, what it is you're trying to draw from. Like, I wouldn't have been able to get something this rhythmical if I didn't draw over this. And this is a totally valid means of like starting your drawings, by the way. These kinds of drawovers. You don't necessarily want to like plagiarize, and you don't want to necessarily like trace. Like there's productive tracing, and then there's counterproductive tracing. Counterproductive tracing is where you're not really making an effort to understand the underlying shapes and stuff, like drawing through the forms and so on, or even trying to understand like the silhouette or whatever. And productive draw versus productive tracing would be kind of stuff like this. This is a tool of understanding this drawing now. Now I have like kind of a better sense of like the energy that goes into a pose like this, and I've internalized it myself. So like if I'm animating a pose that's kind of like this, I can call back to it because now that's in my bloodstream. So let's see here. I'm gonna make a new folder. So we're going to be doing more of these this session. Drawovers of photographs, and I'll be doing more drawovers of other people's work. We'll also mix it up with some more time poses. Let's see here, I'm going to put these away too. How did you guys like the short film before class?
It is. Yeah, no, that's the.
A real nice place to wait. Raise your kids. Bring your kids up.
Okay, so I know it looked old, but it kind of looked like it was like made recently.
It was made in 1973 by a guy named Ivan Stang.
He was ahead of his time.
He really was. He founded he and a guy named Philo Drummond. Okay, Google, stop. Founded a thing called the Church of the Subgenius, which was a pre-internet. But they were also a big part of the early internet. They were almost kind of like the 4chan of their time, but minus the obscene racism and shit. They were like kind of like a artist collective, you might almost want to say, of an open source artist collective group that had like their own kind of Lovecraftian Cthulhu mythos of like fake Scientology religion. They basically made like a fake satire religious cult. That was also kind of like
the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Kind of another example of that would be like the Discordians. The Discordians actually were and still are rivals of the Church of the Subgenius. But anyway, a lot of some of like the pre-Subgenius stuff, like satires of American consumer culture and stuff like that, were in that really interesting little short film. The clown at the beginning is actually played by Ivan Stang. A real nice place to raise your kids up. I'll play that audio on stream again real quick. Let's see here. Play that real quick, and then we'll get back to the class. I just love that audio clip of him talking. I'll put it on camera, actually.
You say you're looking for excitement, adventure, business opportunities, and a real nice place to raise the kids? Well, explore no more. We're there already. Let's visit the world of the future.
Yeah. As you might expect, like the Church of the Subgenius had a pretty big influence on the Fallout game series.
It felt more Bioshocky to me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, also that had an influence on Bioshock too, for a lot of reasons. But
like that immediately sounded like Rapture for some weird reason.
Oh yeah, there's stuff in the Church of the Subgenius that seems like in the Church of the Subgenius lore that is very, very Bioshock, to put it mildly. But anyway.
Do they also have giant mechanical daddies that go around with drills and killing people?
Oh, they have so many. They have the Nazi hell creatures from the Hollow Earth. They have like all kinds of like weird, the excess flying saucers and stuff, and like just tons of weird mythos creatures that they made up over the years for their fake religious cult. The big joke was we are the one religious cult that is not going to lie to you about how we are a fake religious cult and everything is bullshit, basically.
Like there's just a disclaimer on the door, nothing here is real.
Yeah. Wink, wink, nod, nod. In spite of that, there were like cranks and kooks occasionally who would show up, especially in like the news group Usenet days of the Church of Subgenius, that took it seriously and thought it was real. which kind of makes me wonder I kind of wonder how many of those are in QAnon right now, because fucking QAnon is like the most obvious fake 4chan circa 2000s ARG, like alternate reality game that's just like made up shit, you know, like fucking Marble Hornets or whatever.
Oh god.
But like dumbass boomers and gullible stupid asses are like who think it's real because they want to think it's real, and they would be a great example of what the subgenus calls the pinks, or their pinks are the version of are the subgenus slang term for normies, basically. The mediocritans, the normals.
Did Slenderman originate from that, or was that from somewhere else?
Slenderman originated from the Something Awful forums, which I was actually a part of. Including, yeah. And there are actually quite a few subgenuses from the Something Awful forums, too. But anyway, so we're going to get back to our session. I actually just started a little quick impromptu gesture drawing real quick. I'm going to start our poses. We will do, let's see here. Yeah, I think 3 minutes is a good time. Actually, let's do fives. Fives will give us plenty of time to really think about these poses. Let's find a good one that would be good for a good 5-minute pose. Well, first off, this is a really nice page showing off the Proco Bean body. It's on screen right now.
What application is this anyway?
Gesture Drawing 3. Oh, those are nice. I actually may use this. Actually may use this, because this might be a good opportunity to show, like, to play with some kind of, like, pushing anime gestures and stuff. So let's see here. I'm going to use the screenshot app real fast to grab this, because I don't want to dig through the files.
Oh, this is from Kakashi vs. Zabuza. I can tell from the action right now.
Yeah, these look like they were studies. But they're pretty good studies, so I'm going to use them as fodder, to, almost like I was doing a class, almost as if I was doing like a class demo over these. Now's your chance to screenshot this, by the way, in case you want to draw over this yourself. Because I'm going to change it to something else. Something else that's kind of in a similar vein to these poses. There we go. Let's hold it on that guy. But I'm going to start with this a little bit and show, like, a little bit how, like, a little bit what's going on here with these poses is, like, as you mentioned, that you recognize these from an actual fight in the show. So,
yeah, it's like the first major arc in the actual series.
Yeah. So some of the things I'm noticing here that you can kind of pull from is, like, in terms of, like, simplifying the overall sort of read of the body and stuff, you can kind of just like truncate all the details here. Just think of things in terms of, like, simple cylinder shapes. Like here's that straight against curve method. There's a curve right there for the outside of his thigh. There's a straight right here on the top of his thigh. There's another straight kind of here, sort of about where his knees, somewhere around in here is where his knee is bending. It's going down actually through. So even through there, through down to the ankle, through his clothes. There's more detail added on top that kind of disrupts what would be the straights against curves if you didn't have any clothes on there. And that's something to keep in mind when you're designing poses, like the clothing and stuff that bunches up on top of it is just bunching up on top of, like, the simple design shapes that would normally be going into the pose. But we're just thinking in terms of simple shapes. So there's our Steve Houston forearm right there. And I'm just going to use, like, a very simple curve for, like, about where the knuckles are. Right here. Since I am trying to, like, get a little bit of hand practice, and maybe I should do this. So his palm is, this is a very, very kind of simplified, cheated hand a bit, so I'm just going to elaborate on it a little bit. his palm is actually curving over his thigh a little bit, cupping over his thigh a little bit. Out to the ends of the fingers there. And then if we were to like really do like some microsurgery on his fingers, we could do stuff like this. And there's foreshortening going on with his fingers and his knuckles in here too. And major foreshortening happening on the top of his palm. That's a little, just kind of a quickie and dirty hand drawing detour. We'll get back to the simple shapes now. So I'm going to kind of get that in there. This is part of his pelvis. I'm going to use actually a little box form about where I think the pelvis is. What time is it right now? 6:44. Okay, Google, set timer for 15 minutes.
15 minutes, and that's starting now.
So, built into this is you can see the center line on his torso right there. And if you notice those little kind of like those little vest canisters or whatever, I don't know what they're called, vest pockets or something for having his ninja tools and shit. Those are also kind of following the overall curve of the torso. But yeah, that about there is like where the center line is, where the zipper in his vest. His design includes like this kind of like collar sort of shape here, which you can see more of there. I'm not going to mess with that from this angle right now because I kind of need to wrap my head around it some more first, but we're at least going to get his head. His eye, of course, his other eye is of course obscured by his ninja head guard. And part of the gesture of this drawing, and what's reinforcing some of the action here, definitely in general with him, is his hair. Like that kind of sweep there. Like there's like all kinds of little opportunities in poses like these to use different areas of the body, whether it be clothes or the particular position of the limbs kind of reacting to what the rest of the pose is doing. Or stuff outside it, like these skid marks and stuff that telegraph like what the action is. So here we go. We get a little bit clearer case where we can actually use like the ninja handguard on the back of his palm. That's actually a clever character design thing, which helps you kind of read what his hands are doing a little bit easier. That little kind of guard on the back of his hand. You'll see that happen a lot with these decisions for the designs are not made haphazardly. They're like even with the manga poses and stuff. Like these were originally manga characters, but they were made with like kind of like an animation approach in mind a little bit, and for like crazy dynamic comic posing that reads really well, where you can tell at an instant glance like what action these characters are doing and what direction their hands are, what direction their body parts of their body are, and so on. Like you have these little telegraphs that are built into the actual design of the character for their outfit, or just like what areas of anatomy are emphasized, and so on. So just kind of do this. I could simplify this more, but here, like I've got kind of like this side. We got this side plane basically for this simple shape that I'm making for the foot here. It's kind of a hinge here for where the ankle would be, just about. But he's got this cylinder for the the calf going up inside of his clothing here, about there. And his thigh is doing something really interesting here. You can kind of see it through here, especially with that kind of... There's another telegraph right here. We can, so because of this little band that's over his thigh here, we can tell a little easier what his thigh is doing as it connects to the hips and the buttocks down there. So these little details like that on character designs wind up becoming ways to telegraph what the character is doing. Even these little bandages right here that, if we notice in his design, they're on both of his calves right here and his ankles, and then he's got one around his thigh. And that in addition to like his sleeves, for example, telegraphs what direction his like the sleeves here telegraph what direction his forearms are in. The gloves telegraph what his hands are doing. The these kind of here actually telegraph what direction his arm is going. His upper arm is. See? And the designs on his torso, of course, telegraph what direction the torso is. Like, all this stuff, all that detail on the front of his torso is compressed right now because he's leaning forward towards us. So we see like the top of his body, and also in this pose, and that hole that's in the top of his uniform. There's our center line of the torso right there. I love the way that the person who's doing the studies of this did the hand here, bending out the fingers and feeling like that he's pressing his hand against the ground to regain control. And if he was doing this in real life, if he was really skidding across the ground, like he's not going to have any more fingerprints after doing that. Maybe if he had like some kind of like Duratex gloves or some shit like that had like the kind of gloves that like fucking workmen or bicycle riders have to guard your fingers. Like
fiber.
Yeah, he'd probably be better off right there. But I mean, this is a cool ass anime, so his fingers are probably that. His fingers probably could handle something like that, just from sheer training or whatever. It's cool. Okay, shut up.
It is cool, and I will shut up.
Yeah, you can see like there's a big simplified shape you can pull into right here with how that arm goes. And it's what this arm doing is counterposed by this arm right there. So you got a bent arm right there, contrasting the pose of the really straight arm there. And the same thing is kind of going on with the legs. You got one leg that's extended, one leg that's bent. It's cool, dynamic, contrasty posing. You got more of that going on here with this and that. You got more of that going on here with bent here. This is bent, but a little bit more straight there. So we got this leg that's kind of extended and foreshortened towards us, right here. Gonna have a hell of a time figuring out where exactly his knee's supposed to be in there, but I think he's actually supposed to be kind of over here. But he's got a knee back there that's bent and going away from us. So contrasting your poses is a big thing, and both comic book art especially action comics and anime, and Sakuga animation especially. Contrasting your poses is a big deal. So let's see here. I'll maybe grab another photo here to do it, draw over from. What's a good pose that I can pull from? It shows a good example of contrasting action in a realistic pose. I want one that's really pushed and dynamic here. Might have to go for another folder. Oh, this is a good one.
What about the kickflip one? That was...
Kickflip?
You can't really fake that one on the skateboard.
Yeah, no. There's too much going on in that one for... I need something that I feel that I can read into instantly. Here we go. I want something realistic that's not staged too. Like, this is perfect. So let me just snip this real quick. Bring that into my drawing app. So we can actually see in like the kind of stuff that was heavily exaggerated in those poses actually does happen in real life. In this athlete doing a pole vault, or no, not pole vault, javelin throw. So like some of the observations we can make is this leg is a little bit more stretched out. This leg is more coming up and bent. His torso is doing a crazy twist. Like, here's the top of his shoulders right here, about-ish. And then, like, his hips are doing, like... His hips are, like, something... I'm going to raise the opacity here so I can see this a little bit easier. His hips are, like, doing, like, this kind of thing here. There's, like, the side plane of his buttocks. Thigh, side plane of his... thigh, something like the top of his thigh there. We're also looking at him from like a weird up angle, so I'm gonna keep that in mind. But yeah, like connect that to there. If I'm thinking of the top of his torso, like part of a cubic shape connected to the lower body, then like the corners of it are kind of curving in a really weird fashion. The center line's kind of doing that. Yeah, here, maybe it would help if I color coded this a little bit. So this one is doing this right here, connecting up to that anchor point right there. This one is doing this. This one is doing this. This one is doing this. Back here. It's really interesting, isn't it? I just feel like doing this right there for fun. I like those side planes. This little side plane to the lower thigh there. So yeah, like he's got these super contrasty pose right here with his upper arms. So we're passing down that of one arm like really stretched out here, holding the javelin, of course, and this arm bent and kind of counterweighting the throw that he's about to make. But you can see, like, if you start thinking of the pose in terms of like abstract energy, you can sense like the energy that he's going to be putting into that sphere that he's throwing. To me, this looks like he's jumping in the air, and he's going to be using the momentum from his forward jump to put his whole body behind the throw. So he's using gravity in addition to his own body to throw the sphere. But we got these lovely contrasted poses here. Let me change the color so I can make these lovely contrasting limbs here. And the action is of course reinforced by the tilt of his head. Get the side plane in there. Let's shift that back. Okay, Google, stop. But yeah, I mean, like that kind of counterposing stuff that you see in anime happens in nature, or anime and animation in general. Like it happens in like superhero comics or fantasy art, or even fine art for that matter. It's kind of counterposed, contrasted pose. Yeah. Okay, Google, set timer 5 minutes. I'm gonna plumb through.
5 minutes, and we're starting now.
So post what you've been drawing so far in the Discord chat, and I'll do another draw over demo. The rest of the evening, let's see how much time we've got. We've been at this for an hour and a half. Cool. I'm thinking I might do another time pose session that I participate in. Because like this kind of draw over stuff, you kind of want to do it in conjunction with time post stuff. Maybe get like a bunch of these under your belt of like doing draw overs over cool existing work, or like old masters work for that matter. Like don't just look at anime stuff, also look at like fine art and other things. And classical painting and sculpture is good shit. But you want to combine that with doing the time poses stuff, because like you can use something like this to kind of touch base with how these forces kind of work without having to imagine them or bullshit around them, and then you kind of internalize it, and it feeds back into your ability to push stuff or to record stuff a little bit more accurately. Let's put this away. I'm getting really hungry. This is hungry work. I'm actually burning calories doing this, by the way, because I've been using like big sweeping arm movements for a lot of the drawing today. Something like this. Gotta change the ratio on my brush real quick. Here, I'm gonna do some scribbles here. Straight lines. Just kind of reorienting myself a little bit. Get some parallel lines in that are doing a sort of a concentric thing. So this kind of stuff that you should do to like between drawings sometimes to sort of loosen up a bit. So I'm getting a bunch of quick circles and stuff. Old friend the Loomis head, who I have so intuitive now from like drawing thousands of these fucking things that I can use them at any time if I need to solve any head drawing stuff. Yeah, I think I'm at a good brush ratio now for what I want to do. Alright. What time is it? 7:04. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
There's 56 seconds to go.
Cool. Alright, I'm going to take a peek in chat real quick. See what else people have posted so far. Raboots has posted an awful lot, so maybe I'll get to doing some of them. Let me change this. That's a really dynamic pose, though. This is a painting, however. Whoopsie Kuchin has been posting stuff in chat. I can get to them a little bit later. It looks like Raboots is struggling with some things, so maybe I'll do some drawovers on them quick. Bring this in here and I'll just get started, actually. Get started a little early. Okay, Google's add 25 minutes to timer.
Done. 25 minutes added to your 5-minute timer.
So I'm just
You've got 25 minutes and 7 seconds remaining.
So I'm just going to get started early on this. But let's see here. I see some opportunities to mess with this. So first off, on this pose, I'm going to start with this arm, simplifying this arm, because that's kind of going to give me some anchoring for the rest of what I'm doing. I'm going to maybe use like a little kind of brick wedge right here to sort of handle the palm for now. So as for the rest of the drawing, I need to establish a good kind of sweep to it. So pull back a bit. Maybe want to establish a little bit kind of how the thigh relates to the other foot here. Slowly kind of working my way in. Keep in mind that hip tilt, which I presume is tilted. Well, would that be tilted toward us? I don't know. Probably more like this.
It was a very dynamic pose, and it was during the 1 minute poses, so it's not the greatest.
That's okay. I'm kind of inventing something based on what I'm seeing right now. Let's get that thigh in there. Let's get this a little bit more in proportion with the other thigh. I'm not pushing this as much as I could. I'm trying to control this with some shapes. So I'm trying to just get a basic feeling established out of this. It would help if I was looking at the original reference, but I'm just kind of rolling with this as if I was like trying to invent a pose, invent and riff off a pose that I might have at some point had reference for, but my thumbnail wasn't pushed enough or something. But this already feels better because I put some intent behind it, and I kind of like played the rhythms of it off itself, like the rhythm of the torso twists going up back through the arm back here. And then you kind of this right angle straight against curve effect going on here. The down tilt of the head a little bit, making it look a little more sinister. There's more stuff I can do with the thigh and the calf and the forward shortening. This one over here, I think I can push this. I can push the screen left thigh a little bit better. Let's take a look at that. I think pushing this up a bit would help. And then let's try to establish more like of a brick anchoring for the heel a bit, maybe. The calves a little bit short. Yeah, I'm starting to get something a little bit more usable. I'm just not too sure about this leg. Overall, it feels a lot better. I'll move on to another one here. It's being the pose doctor right now. So there's a lot of like wonky proportional stuff going on here. Again, proportions aren't that huge of a problem for quick poses, but even so, you might want to kind of mind them a little bit better. So let's see here. One of the things I can see that I would do is I would establish the tilt of the hips. This is the top plane of like the pelvis, right inside the body. Right there for the box of the hips. Tilting towards us. Then I can kind of establish this thigh a little bit better. It is kind of facing us a bit for shortening, so carve into that a bit without making it too stodgy. Foreshortening on that calf. I'm going to design this to be at the brick of the heel. Back there, kind of. And the brick of the heel that I mean is like where the heel of the foot. An easy way to kind of simplify the foot is to kind of if you think of the heel as being just a box, and you put a couple C curves on it, you can maybe put like kind of a peg through it for the ankle, but you don't really need it for just doing a gesture drawing. Then you kind of like roughly about like 3 or 1.5, 3 or 2.5 of those cubes is about the length of the foot. Probably about 3, I want to say, but you kind of get like a little hockey puck shape on the end there or whatever. I'm doing like a really quick and dirty version of it, of what I have in mind, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Oops. Let's get an indication of that in there because I don't want to dwell too much on that. I want to get the rest of the pose in before I get caught up in details. Alright, so I do like a little bit of what you're kind of going for, but you got really chicken scratchy with it. You could have made like a more bold statement with the curve of the calf going up through there. So I'm gonna use a soft eraser just right here. So we have a little bit of the undersketch, so we know the energy of the rhythm line that's going through it, but we just reduce the visibility on it so we know what's overlapping over what. A better. Alright, so let's see here. So we do have a lot of foreshortening going on here with this arm sweep. I'm not even going to try to begin to understand what the hand is doing, but I'm going to kind of guess a little bit.
Yeah, from what I remember, it was just kind of being dragged backwards.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. I only have like so much information here, so I'm kind of drawing on what I know about, what I intuitively know about figures from studying, to kind of pull in some ideas of how to play with this. And the figure is facing this way, but I really think it's more fun to turn the head that way, so I'm going to do that. So put an ear there, mouth there, so we know what direction the head is facing. So let's see here, maybe should their hair be doing that, or should it be doing? That looks cooler. Maybe like this. So that kind of plays off the rhythm there a little bit. Let's erase some of this. So maybe I'll do one more here. Let's see. This one gets a little kind of floppy. So I'm going to immediately pull into this. These triple lines right here that I'm using to kind of establish the general kind of line of action for the torso. And then I can use that subsequently for the legs and the calves a little bit and play off some of it. I'm not going to go maybe as in-depth on this one as the other ones I did, but this is kind of an example of how you can use like sweeping gesture to kind of make a bolder statement that's a little bit more like a plausible pose. So let's see here. So I'm establishing right here the direction of the foot and the heel back here. The cube of the heel is about there-ish. And I don't know what angle the ground is, but I'm going to kind of guess a little bit. Another thing is that I didn't, when I was doing this triple sweep and stuff, I assumed that this was the center line of the torso, but now that I'm thinking about it, let's see here. Yeah, that's the, no, I was right, actually. So it was kind of like this, but it was more like it's kind of curvy.
Yeah, it was like some kind of odd contrapposto.
Yeah.
What I remember, just very straight on.
Mm-hmm. I'll use black on the head, I think. Just get that kind of circle in there, just because we've got a really heavily foreshortened arm here, so let's get the overall gesture in a little bit. Then we can go back in. We add little, we section it off piece by piece, the foreshortening. So there's the bicep, there's the forearm, and it's just a really simple way to handle it. Like you have the information there of the foreshortening. Because this hand is going up here, I'm going to do this for the forearm, kind of. I think I need a soft eraser now. Actually, isn't there a kneaded eraser setting? Yeah, I think that would work better for this. Definitely. Yeah, this is better. Let's keep that. And then I'll do a red hand over the top, maybe. So we get this kind of curved cube right there for the palm. I'm just going to do some simple indications of the fingers without getting too into them. Add a little bit of an indication of the knuckle. This thumb kind of up over there. Maybe scoot this a little. clear definition of the directional turn of the arm there for the elbow bend. And there's a little kind of simplified, kind of like working out the mechanics and the architecture of a foreshortening point. We can go further into this. I actually went further into this than I meant to, but I'll do a few more things on this before I move on. Let's see. I think that the proportions could probably be addressed a little bit. The calf versus the thigh. The head's looking a little large, so maybe shrink that guy down.
Is there a specific rule with straight versus curves when it comes to the legs? Like, do they always go in the same?
No, it just depends on your observation and your judgment. There are some rules of thumb, depending on what angle you're looking at the leg from. Like, for example, the well, generally the side that's like more, generally the side that is more stretched out is going to be the straight side. The side that is more bunched up is going to be the curved side. But it really depends. Let's see if we can make a drawing right here with just straights against curves to show what I mean. Like, here's a straight. There's kind of a curve. A little bit. Sectioning off the forearm from the tricep or forearm from the bicep or whatever. A little bit. So this guy's bending backward. This guy's like leaning backwards, leaning way backwards. I don't know what's happening with his butt there. But let's try triaging this a little bit. So I'm looking for more opportunities. So there's kind of a curve, straightish curve here, but then like and then the calf is a little bit more curved. In proportion a little bit more. Plant those feet. Establish where the pelvis is a bit. So I'm feeling like this guy is like really flexing his arm, like this looks like someone who's pulling on something to me.
It was the weird remote control pose where he was just in that extreme.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah. To me, it almost kind of looks like he's pulling on something. So I've been kind of going with that a bit. But I know what pose you're talking about. That the other one, the guy in the suit. Whoa, I'm a retro gamer. He looks like a 1960s mod doing gaming. Like some retro future shit, like what if they had video games in the 1960s? Like these little weird...
But they were all Steam based.
Yeah. Or just like 1960s television technology looking shit, where they try to like cover up the techno things. Was it supposed to... Did it look like it was a steampunk cosplay or something? Like a Jules Verne kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's probably what was going on. So let's see here. Sometimes you'll get like one side that's like, this might even count as a straight, versus like this, which is like that's definitely straight. But it depends what you contrast it with, like that, and then you like really bow this. for example. There's also other stuff too, like the bow and arrow, which is like this kind of approach, which involves like treating those kind of bendy forms of the body like a bow and arrow that can stretch and compress and being manipulated as if it was like a bow and an arrow. In this case, like, you can think of what happens when the torso bends as being a major example of that. And it happens other areas of the body too, but we'll get into the bow and arrow stuff in a future session a little bit more. I kind of need to refresh my knowledge on that particular tool. Like, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is intuitive, just from like hand fisting these drawings and stuff, and like then like slowing down and studying different and thinking about different techniques and then trying them out and stuff. I'm sort of like gradually getting my own momentum going for my own drawing in doing these. That's also why I'm doing these drawing demos. These are actually helping me too, because like I'm kind of working through, like, if I do a weak drawing and I feel like I need to push it or solve issues with it, having done like draw over demos of other people's work where I kind of push things really helps me with that. So I think after the next break I'm going to go back to some time poses, a mix of time poses and draw overs, I think. Oh, I'm getting a little bit... Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
3 minutes and 58 seconds to go.
Very nice. I'm going to take an early break. I'm going to grab a quick snack. So I'll be right back. Where the hell's my music? I hate it when I can't find my music tab. Oh, there it is. And now a word from our sponsor. Oops, that is silent, isn't it? There we go.
What's MC? Meat Clown. Meat Clown? What? Hey, where are you going? I'm just walking down to MC. What's MC? Meat Clown. Meat Clown? What is that?
Meat Clown is a wholesale provider of quality discount meat products.
And look, we have beef loin tri-tip roast for only $4.49. Meat Clown meat products, OMG, they're so delicious.
And make sure to try our new Meat Clown meat nuggets.
You could get crunk with your Meat Clown.
Come on down to Dave's Chillin' and Grillin' at 2152 Colorado Boulevard and get your free Meat Clown pin.
I'm gonna get my free Meat Clown pin and I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Okay, Google, set time, add 5 minutes to timer.
Done. 5 minutes added to your timer.
Alright, I'm back. How much time we got? We got 1 more hour, don't we? Yes, we do. We have 1 more hour. That's wild. So, I'm gonna hit the restroom real quick. I'll be right back. We're still on our mini break. When I get back, we're going to do some. I'll do some draw over poses of the what's up there. I'll do a mix of like 5 minute time poses and draw over poses. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
There's 24 seconds left.
Nice. So, since I've been coming back to this, I've gotten way fewer viewers than I had in the past, which is fine because I've been having a hard time maintaining my classes. But, okay, Google, stop. But I'm really happy, like, this session we've hovered at around 29 to 26 viewers or so. So that means most of the people here have been here for most of the whole session following along, which is great. Should be here for the whole session, for the whole art workout. And now we're going to get into a 25-minute set of 5-minute poses. I will also do maybe a mix of draw-overs on the poses. And here, let me change it to a good pose for us for 5 minutes. That's a good one. We'll do that one. Let's start there. Okay, Google, set timer for 25 minutes.
Okay, 25 minutes. And that's starting now.
Alrighty. So I'm going to bring this pose into my drawing app. Let's see here. I'm going to do a draw over it to see how I can push and exaggerate this thing. Oh yeah, let's get the music back on again. I don't want to forget that. Turn it up just a tad. All right. So, for this pose, you can see that there's the counter posing thing I was talking about going on in it. Alright, take a deep breath, and let's get back into it. Let's see here. Whoops. Alright. So, fortunately this clothing right here shows us like how stuff is compressing really nicely. It's one of the advantages of fabric in certain kinds of poses. And that stuff we'll get more into when we get into fabric drawing in the future. I just want to get more rock solid with my figure drawing before I start getting more into fabric. So I'm looking for like kind of the overall feeling of this pose. Oops, it doesn't really. And I'm trying to figure out how I can go beyond it a little bit. without really like tracing it per se. I can kind of riff on it a bit and push it. Use it as a starting point to make something crazier. Sort of deciding rules for what I'm going to be doing on the fly, like what I just did with the calf and the foot there, for example. Decided I'm going to make the limbs a little longer. I'm going to push this a bit. So you notice I'm not strictly copying or tracing. Well, I'm basically like drawing over reference, you might want to say. Like there's little bits and pieces where I do to kind of draw over what I'm doing a little bit, but I'm not really tracing per se. Like this is kind of like, instead of putting the reference beside you to like draw alongside it, this is pretty much just going straight on top of the reference to create a pose, basically. So this would not be tracing per se. This is riffing that you'd use to design something. I'm trying to look for like the overall kind of energy of the pose. Let's see how far I can take it. How much time do we have on this pose? 40 seconds. Oof. I actually may spend a little bit longer on this. So I want to do another pass on it. Kind of work out the shapes a little more. Pick a good 5-minute pose in here. That's a good one. I'll use that one. Yeah, you guys can draw that other 5-minute pose, copy it into your artist app if you want to do what I'm doing here. Or you can just spend a good 5 minutes working out the gesture or whatever. Yeah, it's not cheating to do drawovers like this as your starting point for a pose or something that you're doing. It's cheating when you are like plagiarizing. If you can riff on a pose like this, even if you're drawing over it, and you go beyond it and you change it, then you're not plagiarizing or copying or tracing. It's using it as a starting point for a design. Just make sure that when you do this, by the way, when you're doing professional work, that if you use something that's really kind of obviously using a particular photo, make sure you have the rights to do that. So it's totally fine to like shoot your own photo reference and be pretty slavish to it, but or even if you're like doing like studies or whatever. But if you're like using it in professional work, I've seen it happen before where like a photographer or somebody who has the rights to the original photo might pull a copyright claim on the work. Generally, you're not going to have that problem with like doing art studies, or if you're like a small-time illustrator and you have like sketchbook work like this on drawing over photographs or doing your own riff on an existing photograph pose or something. I mean, this happens whether that thing I'm talking about happens whether or not you're doing a draw over or not. So yeah, this is like a starting point of like kind of a cartoon character pose or cartoony pose, like an exaggerated athletic moment with this character I'm sort of playing with here. I can get rid of that stuff, and then I can try to play with it on its own terms a little bit more, make it more like a better constructed character. Address the proportional issues that are going on in it, while keeping the overall spirit of the pose going. Adjust and change little things, like I don't really like the way I did her nose or the front of her face, so do this. That's good enough for me to move on from, I think. Just lower opacities on that some more and put that in a folder. I did like that pose that's on screen, but I think I'm going to pick another one now. Let's pick a really good one. That guy's pretty good for showing off that contrasting pose thing I was talking about with the Naruto reference. So I'll use him. Oops. Alright, so for this dude, first off, before I move any further, I'm going to save a backup of this file. There we go. Alright, so there's a lot to take away from this guy for his line of action and everything, so I'm going to try to key into some of the energy of the pose a bit. So we do have like this kind of curvy energy that's being truncated by the flat straightness of his palms on the ground, kind of in parallel with each other there. Got these broad sweeps. Happening right here for his legs and thighs, going through his body. Adding some cylinders showing the direction that his arm's going. So his bicep is actually turning towards us a bit. So a little opacity on this and getting in more in the nitty-gritty of describing what's going on here. I see a few opportunities for me to play with some things with this. I'll start using the circular motions of my hand. So we got the torso that's tilted towards us, the ribcage shape. The back is kind of twisted down there. His buttocks, they're at kind of an odd angle there. Covered up mostly, but they're like down here. His pelvis is like about there-ish. Let's get a kind of general shape of the thigh and calf in there. I don't think that this shape is really helpful on the calf right here. I need more of a cylinder kind of for this. Like this maybe, something like that. Raise the opacity on this so I can see it a little bit more. Interesting thing that his foot is doing is kind of, he's curling his toes there at the end, so the whole front of the foot is kind of doing this sort of dynamic sweepy thing. Like the energy in a pose, in a human pose, has to dissipate itself, and sometimes you'll see like on the end points of the limbs they're kind of wrinkling and adjusting, because when a person moves their whole body, especially in like a really dynamic way, everything in the body is kind of like subconsciously working to balance and counterbalance itself, like because of how our nervous systems and our brains are wired. So like in order to like feel out, like we do a lot of like unnecessary action with our bodies that help us kind of feel out our sense of balance and stuff. And you can see some of that in some of these poses if you really look for them. But they add character and expressiveness to the posing. Like if these were robots doing these poses, we probably wouldn't see quite as much. And that kind of like weird extraneous, energized, lively movement. Those weird little ticks, like the curves of the toes there and the ends there. Like a robot would move a lot more efficiently than that. Whoops, we did not want this pose. What pose do we want? We want this pose, I think. Yeah, we want this pose because there's some good foreshortening to analyze on this one. So first up, I'm going to put these in their folder here. So this is a tough pose. So I'm going to try to go through it freehand. And I may fuck up. But I think it's time for me to be a little bit more bold. So I'm just going to establish a head real quick. That's about where the eye line is right there. I'm just going to say the eye line is there. And that means, therefore, that shoulders would be about here. Torso, top of the torso, it's tilted towards us. course, it's going to be about like that. I'm trying to not be like sloppy with this one, even though I will probably push it more, because I kind of want to get some stuff right before I get really expressive with it. Now that I got kind of that going, I'm using that sort of relate these two hands to each other a bit. Got that going. I'm going to try be a little bit more bold with it and feeling it out more. Let's get some more of that intuitive drawing I was talking about this evening into this. I had to slow down a bit because there's some tough foreshortening going on in that upper body, and I kind of wanted to mess with that. I might need to do a little bit of that again for these thighs, but we'll see. It's a little bit far out there. So this drawing feels a little bit lacking in confidence to me because I was trying to deal with these arms up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower opacity on it. And I'm going to push it. Try to make it more like a character drawing. But I have some of the stuff I was kind of wrestling with initially to play off of. Got this kind of torso shape there. Keeping this nice and loose so I can kind of feel my way through it. I think I scribbled a little bit too much on that part. The goal here is I'm trying to feel my way through the pose. Get something active and alive. This is a tricky pose. Slower passing it on again. Let's see what I can do. Actually, I'm going to, now that I've kind of gotten a little bit further along into that, I think I'm going to just go to the next pose. Alright, so this one might be our last pose for this before the 5-minute break. Okay, Google, how much time left on timer?
You've got 3 minutes and 55 seconds to go.
Okay, Google, add 1 minute to timer.
Done. 1 minute added to your timer.
So this one is a little bit easier for me to read because there's not any crazy amount of foreshortening happening in it. So I'm just going to go for trying to make this really expressive and fun. Let me shrink this so I can get the whole thing on the page. So there's extreme angles and tilts happening here. This big old sword up here. now, go back over again. Let's see about putting shapes in there. So we get this tilt of the pelvis right here. Just a little bit more. It's really nice that you can like totally see the side plane of the head there thanks to that lighting that's going on there. Wow. So again, get kind of a straight right here for the underarm. And then you can kind of simplify the top of the bicep with a curve. Of course, there's way more going on here too. There's a plane change going on with that elbow on the bicep there. Let's see here. Push those hips up a bit. Up but not out. Okay. So bracing on that. So I need the hips more like this. Center line of the torso. Then we get two parallel-ish lines for the legs, the overall shape of the legs. Similar for the other leg. Let's take a look at proportions. I am exaggerating them, so it's okay if they go out a little out of whack. Let's beef up those feet, actually. She's got big feet. I think I want to spend a little bit extra time with this even after the timer ends, so I'm going to reset the clock on it. There. So a few observations from this. What her torso is doing right here, like you can see, let me put that in here actually. You can see like the top plane of her torso is tilted towards us, kind of. So that means like her rib cage is doing something like that. Okay, Google, stop. Show them like this. It's like her collarbone is like kind of doing its own thing, but yeah, it's probably about like here actually. That her actual ribcage shit is doing that. Oh, actually, I should get rid of this. I should have made a new layer for that. All right, so. Say that her ribcage is doing something more along these lines. But then like her shoulders are doing crazy shit. That one's raised up and this one's kind of raised out. Her pelvis is doing something along these lines. Yeah, if you get lost on like connecting the pelvis and stuff, you could just look for the corners right here. Stuff and how they line up with the two cubes that make up the pelvis and the rib cage. Like so. Like these things can go, it can bend any which way, but you can kind of use this basic shape to sort of like plot out what's happening with these two pieces of anatomy. So that's what they're doing. Yeah, her thighs and legs are pretty straightforward, although I kind of went too far with the proportions, I think, on that one. Dial it back in a little bit. There's also this interesting thing that's happening here with the plane change of the arm that you can see. So like if the arm was a cube, it'd be something like this. What's going on here, basically. About 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, Google, set timer for 2.5 minutes. Okay, Google, set timer for 2.5 minutes.
2 minutes and 30 seconds. And we're starting now.
So don't be afraid to get like really dirty when you're trying to work out stuff in your pose and like the mechanics of how a pose works, like what I'm doing here. Like you'll do drawovers kind of like this, where you're kind of working stuff out. Like what does that do? What's making sense there? And it's like it becomes your notes for these drawing problems you're trying to solve. And you do these so you can wrap your head around what you're trying to draw before you do a pretty drawing. When you're faced with like a difficult pose that you might not really know how to handle. And then you take care of like the thinking and the breaking down of stuff that you need in order to draw the pose or have a guideline for like where you put your inks or whatever. The next session on this, the next 25-minute session is going to be our last session for the evening. I'm going to preemptively thank you all for coming. If you like the stream and you want to support the stream, you can shoot me a Twitch Prime sub, or you can subscribe to me on my Patreon, where all my class demos will be available to you for the low price of $1. Although if you pledge for $5, you can get the PSD files to import to Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint or GIMP or whatever else you use. So you can see the guts of how I work this stuff layer by layer. Yeah, see? Look at that. Like this is like the next phase I would go in with that gutsy drawing and stuff. This is starting to look like it's starting to like look a little bit closer to like what an actual drawing would be worked up into. Like it's still scaffolding and shapes and stuff, but starting to like work with the drawing problems that we've made notes on. So for this last session, I'm going to maybe drop the time on the poses to 3 minutes. Okay, Google, set timer for 25 minutes. And we are just going to go for it. We're going to be super dynamic.
Now.
We're just going to really push stuff. So on that note, I'm going to actually look at some of my previous drawings that I've done real quick to kind of like warm up my brain to how I need to think and how I need to approach this stuff. So let's see here. I'm going to peek at some of these I was doing earlier. These invented poses that I was doing. Yeah, in fact, I'm gonna draw directly into this right here. I'm gonna make it first. I'm gonna save a duplicate. Then I'm going to go back through and shrink these. I'll take a bunch of these warm-up drawings I did earlier. Shrink them so I can have several of them on the page. Don't want that one. It's a good one. It's a good one. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer, put a white fill on it, drop the opacity a little bit, lock the layer so I don't draw on it by accident. And now I'm going to do my remaining drawing poses tonight on this with those warm-up drawings I did back behind me, so I can remember how I warmed up this evening and how I wanted to get more into dynamic action posing things, and I can apply that to some of the. I can then apply what I was doing in the figure invention to the timed poses that we're going to have for the remainder of the session tonight. So I'm going to skip ahead to the next pose, right? No. Alright, so one of the big takeaways I got from this kind of figure approach is using those kind of circular motions of your hand and your arm. Not always circular, sometimes you're doing straights, like what I just did there. Kind of feel out and sculpt out the figure and stuff. We did this pose earlier, but I didn't get a chance to draw it, so I'm putting it on now. We've only got 3 minutes to do it. Let's see here, I'm going to make a new window of this. Workspace, where is it again? Canvas, new window. Okay, there we go. Let's move that over here so I can get a full view of what I'm drawing. Oops. That ain't right. That should be over here. Boost that brush size again. Yeah. I think another thing that was throwing me off is I started using the smaller brush size. I need to go back to my thick brush size like this. There we go. Yeah, now I've got my rhythm back. when I use the smaller brush size, I tend to get caught up into detail more. When I should be concentrating on the big gesture and the big feeling of it. That's the other reason we do practice like this, so we can be more cognizant of those little things like that that might throw us off. Sometimes we'll forget. And regularly practicing to do a tune-up kind of helps us remember, oh yeah, I need to draw with a big thick brush, for example, to get the results I need. So there we go on that. That's not a very dynamic pose. Let's go to, there we go, that lady again. But this time I'm going to do a freehand. And because I have this big thick line, I'm not as concerned with like messing up an anatomical detail. It just becomes about the energy of the pose. And now that I got this, the opacity, new layer, red. I go back through and make some shapes that kind of play off the gesture I just drew to better describe the anatomy, or not the anatomy, but the just the figure. So it's not going to be too much anatomy in this. I only have 3 minutes to do this after all, so there's only so much time to put anatomical information in a pose like this. I'm more concerned with motion and movement and things that might reinforce it or telegraph what direction things are turning, like her wristband, for example. I'm going to have to make some editing decisions right now about what details I don't spend much time with. What details I push, like I push the head tilt a little bit. Emphasize the back of her hips a little bit more. Kind of a circular curve going down there. I did get a little bit tangled in there, but it's okay, just move on. Let's get a straight against a curve in there. Straight against a curve for the heel. Going down to the heel. Kind of plant that a little bit in front of the foot. I already did that pose, so I'm going to skip that. Let's see here. We'll do that one. Okay, so back to blue again, maybe. Let me get those big, thick lines that I need. To get the kind of gestural flow that I need out of this pose. She's got a really counterposy, JoJo-esque push to her hips, because she's a fashion model in this pose. We're doing a fashion model-y pose right now. A lot of attitude in it. This pose can definitely be pushed. Got that. Now go back through. And look for places that I can push or pull shapes from. Kind of baggy pants in there, just a little bit of an indication of the gesture of that. So I'm going to include these lines here to kind of indicate a little bit of the center. I'm going to do like a thing where like her hair is kind of straight on this side, and I'm going to curl it and wave it on that side. Because one side is kind of against her body, and the other side is kind of curl a little on the edges there, but it's falling down on this side. Indication of her chest, belt, midriff. That's pretty good. Very cartoony version of what we just had in that last pose. That is a very nice pose. I've drawn this one before that's on screen now, but now I'm going to really try to push this one. And I may push it to past the breaking point, but we'll get to play with this and find out. This is an insanely fun pose, though. So I'm just gonna go for it and just not even care. I'm gonna play with this. This is starting to have a pretty nice dynamic feel to it. They were all simple shapes. I can push up that hip a little bit. So this is feeling pretty darn good for me right now, this particular pose. I don't know about the torso quite. I think there's more I think it's more on like this side, like the inactive side versus the active side here. There's some stuff I can do with it. Let's see here. I think it's mainly to do with like the chest. Let's see here. I'm gonna do this in the minute I have left. Yeah. I like how that one turned out. So, let's find another more dynamic pose. There we go. Very dynamic, athletic lady jumping up there, showing off an amazing set of muscles there on her stomach and her chest. Let's see here. So I really want to feel the rhythm of this pose. This. Just push out the chest that way. Just erase some of that. Erase some of this. Head is kind of pointed down diagonally that way. You can kind of see where her earphones are placed to kind of judge the head angle, in fact. Let's see, I think I kind of placed her leg a little awkwardly. Something like this, and like that. Alright, let's lower opacity on this, and I'll hunt for some shapes now. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in here that I'm going to fix, actually. Like, this should be shorter, I think. I'm going to add bonus time to this pose, so I want to work out some stuff in it. So this is considerably more contained. I could probably do another pass on this, pushing the shapes more. But I just wanted to kind of contain it a little bit for my own purposes. To better understand what's going on there a little bit more and kind of have a little opportunity to analyze the direction that things are going in, like the foreshortening on that calf and the thigh here. There's actually some stuff going on here that I really would have liked to capture if I wasn't as exhausted as I am right now. But that's the kind of stuff I can do a draw over for, maybe. There we go. I think I'm good with that one. That was a really fun pose. That one that we did earlier. Let's see what we can do with this guy, actually. It's a 3-minute pose. So this guy's more of a kid, so he has a larger head in proportion to his body. Trying to freehand the fingers a little bit, just for shorthand practice. So I know how to construct a hand, but I need to like get more mindful of being able to shorthand hand poses in the future. Same thing goes with features too. I need to kind of, in the future, use more shorthand on facial features and stuff and doing some of these kinds of things. It's really handy for storyboard artists to do that sort of stuff, and animators in some cases. Skateboard made me think for a second. Do you think, like decades from now, actually I think even now for that matter, do you think Steve Buscemi's mainly going to be remembered as the how do you do fellow kids guy? Mostly by like kids who've never seen Reservoir Dogs or whatever. Let's see here. I don't think this is a little stodgy compared to what's up there.
Sorry, it's
Yeah. So I'm going to go back over this again and maybe push it just a little bit, push it and simplify it. Yeah, for the Steve Buscemi thing.
Yeah. Sorry, like my Discord, when I mute myself, I'm trying to unmute myself because my
One of the subtle less than subtle details actually about that scene that's from, he's got 2 skateboards. Okay, Google, stop. He's got 2 skateboards because he's trying to prove how much of a badass he is. So he needs 2 skateboards, not 1. So we're officially done for the evening. I'm just doing a little draw over on this to kind of cap things off. So I'm going to be talking later with Taniko Pantoja about some strategies I have in mind for my classes. He's interested in teaching classes. I don't know through this Discord, but there might be a joint effort between his Discord and this one. So we'd have people from here, like, we'd probably coordinate with like the people from here to like let people know when he's on or whatever for his class streams. The other thing is that I want to talk with him about stuff that's going to help me push myself more in the direction of doing more like finished drawings of like characters and stuff, and more animation. Because I've had severe problems with like animators block and artists block with doing finished drawings for a while. Like these gestural posing things are helping build my confidence, but now I kind of want to take the energy that I'm putting into these and make them into like, yeah, more finished pieces. I'm getting some of that right now with the game project, the concept art in the game project that we're working on. But I want to take that further. But yeah.
I've kind of, well,
I actually have to get back. Yeah, I actually have to get back to the animation cleanup thing I was working on like last week or something, because I need to do some more of that to get more warmed up into animating.
I use a website and it's kind of
Janky.
janky, yeah, but that's pretty much, my computer cannot render any type of animation software, it will explode. So I just use this website instead.
Gosh darn it, there's only 12 people here.
I accidentally
Shameful.
just now.
Shameful. I think most people. I think the part of the reason is like a lot of people are exhausted from Soul Chorus class. That and I've been really wonky and I've been pretty wonky and inconsistent with my classes lately, and I'm kind of getting back in the groove of things. So I think some people who were interested in my classes are like, I don't know if I want to show up for them now, which is understandable. 'Cause
I sent you a copy.
oh, thank you. Anyway, on screen right now should be, let's see. Well, no, not right now. I got to turn it on. There we go. So on screen is this thing I'm going to keep working on throughout the week. I'll leave this open so I can keep working on this tomorrow or something. But I want to finish the rest of the cleanup poses on this, the cleanup and color poses on this. But like, you can see like what I'm doing here is this is an application basically of what we're doing in this figure drawing class right now. Using an existing character that I've designed previously that I'm combining with like the rough character drawing I did back there, and then like kind of riffing on it to create these animation key poses and stuff.
These are really like vibrant primary colors.
Yeah, that was the intention behind them. I'm even going to be like doing some kind of a glowing primary color streak for like like these smears and stuff.
Gives off catalyst vibes.
Yeah, definitely. That was the intention with him for sure. This is not like the protagonist from our game project, but maybe he should be a protagonist of a game project. He is a protagonist of a story that I actually have made.
He's gonna be the king of the game pirates.
What software is it?
It's Toon Boom Harmony, but here's how the whole sequence looks. got to do some additional stuff to it too. Like there's some rough animation in there that isn't there that I'm gonna add before I add the cleanup to it. But when it's done, I'll make it. It'll be a little portfolio piece.
I feel like one thing I have is an impact at the end. I feel like his legs fly up.
Well, yeah, no, that's some of the stuff I'm going to add. Like there needs to be more kind of like follow through on what's going on there. Like he instead, like overshoot, and then he rebalances himself or something. I'll figure out what to do though.
His knees need to bend a lot more when he lands. There's not enough give there. He just kind of just boop.
Kind of falls into it.
Yeah.
Like it's like a very immediate stop. Like there needs to be a little bit more of an overshoot.
Probably.
I think
It works though. Like I'm probably not gonna fix that.
Yeah, it looks good though. Like honestly, that's how I look.
Like I think it's there, but it's not indicated enough, or not pushed enough.
Like if his knees bent in a little bit and then
See
came
that-
back
see
towards
that-
metal, that might work.
See, it is coming back. Yeah. Maybe I can push that. Maybe I can push that on the keys, because it's up there, but it's down here. So maybe that's something I have to keep in mind on this part right here, when I'm doing the cleanup on that. I'm gonna have to watch that. There's some volume things going on with the roughs here that I've got to pay attention to, so it doesn't get fucked up. There's a body. That's a body turn right there.
I don't think it needs to be too exaggerated though.
But I'm gonna go through and like do this basically on some of it to kind of work out the posing better before doing the cleanup. Which is what I did for some of these. You can see the red behind this one, for example, where I sketched out where I sketched out some stuff to work out like stuff beyond the initial roughs a little better. See? But yeah, that's what I'll do. Like before I move into the cleanup, I'll do this basically to make sure the like the thing's gonna work when I clean it up. So like that little volume change on the hips and stuff. I want to keep things kind of in line with this and this, and maybe that. Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna make sure I get some work done on this tomorrow. I might do a chill and draw stream for it or something. But yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I want to see some of my animals.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are it's kind of hard to deal with this program because it doesn't.
So you're kind of fighting the software a little, or yeah, it can happen.
Have you tried using Krita's animation site or even OpenTunes?
No, I should, just to kind of test it out. Like, say if I'm going to be working in a pipeline with a bunch of collaborators that use that for like a free software thing, I might want to use it to show people how to make good use out of it or something.
It's
I don't know about Krita. I don't think I'd be too comfortable with Krita. Well, no, there's good ways to set up Krita that I've seen.
One of the devs created a fork of it called Tahoma, where he basically just cleaned the crap out of the interface to make it simpler.
Yeah.
From what I've seen so far, it's actually very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's still running on the same OpenTunes base, so all the files load up.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's only 13 viewers here. Jeez. Hopefully we can get more viewers in the future. Now that I'm starting to get back in the groove, but yeah. I'm gonna set up a congratulations now. I'm gonna call it a night.
It's like super late right now.
It is, but I mean, like, I used to get more people. For the reasons that I already mentioned, like, I think that's why attendance is down. Like, a combination of solo chorus, long class during the day, which is kind of redundant. Like, hers is a figure drawing class, and then, like, I'm doing a figure drawing class, and she's way better than me, so people pay more attention to that. It's fine.
Well, you fit my style, you know?
Yeah.
I look more of a cartoonish look, well, it's like...
I may actually talk with her about the idea of combining what she does with what I do, and maybe we can do a collab class of some sort. I don't know.
I feel like it would be like super cool if you went over like cartoonish and like exaggerated proportions of characters and like how like
Yeah.
animations usually mean, you know, evil, all fat, round, and stuff cute.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd do really good at this design class.
Yeah, I'm trying to build up my confidence and stuff and my consistency with that before I can get more into that sort of thing. But yeah, that's on the horizon. That's the kind of stuff I want to talk to Nico about. Anyway, so congratulations.